Hello. General Hospital today will reveal. After the stunning turn of events in which Willow Kane was exonerated in court, the emotional and legal fallout in Port Charles is far from over. The next chapter may hinge on what Trina Robinson and Kai Taylor are prepared to reveal, and more importantly, when and to whom they reveal it. For Michael Corinthos, who may now face charges tied to the explosive shooting incident, their information could be the key to his defense or his downfall. The tangled web surrounding this case is tightening, and with every new revelation, the stakes grow more personal, more political, and far more dangerous. In the wake of Willow's acquittal, a spotlight has shifted onto what really happened the night of the shooting, and who bears the brunt of the blame. While Willow's defense had to be cautious and calculated, especially under the guidance of Alexis Davis, who risked her legal license to keep the trial focused, the implications of what's been suppressed may now come to light. Trina and Kai had been quietly investigating the incident on their own, driven by both loyalty and guilt. What they uncovered, a secret audio file and the damning ringtone that was never introduced, as evidence could change the trajectory of Michael's future. But this evidence is a double-edged sword wrapped in moral ambiguity and hidden motives. Diane Miller had known about the existence of this audio clue, but ethical limitations prevented its use during Willow's trial. Alexis, despite her brilliance and conviction, couldn't risk jeopardizing her legal standing or Willow's fragile path to vindication by introducing evidence obtained through murky channels. It was a gamble, one that worked in Willow's favor. But now, with Michael potentially in the legal crosshairs, Diane might not be bound by those same restraints, especially if the prosecution led by Justine Turner moves forward with formal charges against him. The irony is, Trina and Kai may believe they are bringing something new to the table by stepping forward with their information. In reality, Diane has been waiting for the right moment to utilize it, likely unaware of its true origins. If Trina and Kai offer their testimony or context to support the evidence, it could finally become admissible. This dynamic sets the stage for a critical courtroom showdown, where timing and presentation could make or break Michael's case. But this isn't merely about courtroom strategy, it's also about guilt, redemption, and unresolved trauma. Trina has struggled with her own role in the events that led to the shooting. She may have convinced herself she was only an observer, but emotionally, she's deeply entangled. Kai, ever the enigma, has kept his motivations close to the chest. Some in Port Charles whisper that his involvement has always been more about protecting Trina than uncovering the truth, and this may influence how the evidence is ultimately used or withheld. Both of them face a moral test. Will revealing the truth finally bring justice, or will it further fracture an already splintered community? Meanwhile, Michael is navigating dangerous emotional terrain. His estranged relationships with Willow, with Sonny, even with Jason leave him increasingly isolated. If charges are filed, and if the evidence becomes public, he could not only lose his freedom, but also the last remnants of trust within his family. That's a risk Diane must calculate, as she prepares for the possibility of defending yet another Corinthos in court. Given her long-standing loyalty to Sonny and Jason, her alignment with Michael introduces new complications. Loyalties that once seemed unshakable may now be tested, especially if using Trina and Kai's evidence forces Diane to confront her own ethical boundaries. Once again, the district attorney's office under Justine Turner's leadership is also walking a tightrope. Pursuing charges against Michael could be politically advantageous, particularly if the case garners media attention or exposes cracks in the Corinthos family's facade. But it also risks alienating key allies and sparking a backlash that could destabilize the legal system in Port Charles. Justine has a reputation for being calculated and ambitious, and this case might become her proving ground or her undoing. The hidden layers of this saga aren't limited to the courtroom. Personal relationships across Port Charles are being reshaped by the fallout. Trina's growing bond with Kai has become a subject of speculation, especially as they spend more time together in secrecy. Willow, while relieved by her own freedom, is far from at peace. Her acquittal came at a cost. Trust has been broken, and her name, though legally cleared, remains tangled in whispers. Alexis, for her part, is emotionally drained but proud of her decision, even as she waits for the Bar Association to review her handling of the case. There's a lingering question in all this. Who truly holds the power now? Is it Diane armed with the knowledge but waiting for the right opening? Is it Trina and Kai, whose sense of justice might finally overpower their fear? Or is it Justine Turner, whose hunger for victory might push her to take down one of the most influential families in town? One thing is certain: this isn't over. With each passing day, the fragile truths held by Trina and Kai become more volatile. The decision to speak up or remain silent carries consequences that ripple far beyond Michael's fate. It touches everyone, from Willow and Alexis to Sunny and Jason, and even into the dark corners of the Corinthos legacy. What they choose to do next could determine not only who faces prison, but who can live with themselves after the dust settles. And somewhere in the background, another figure might be watching, waiting, calculating, because in Port Charles, no secret stays buried forever. Following Willow Kane's emotional acquittal and the shifting legal tides in Port Charles, another crucial legal maneuver is quietly forming behind the scenes, one that could protect Trina Robinson and Kai Taylor from facing criminal liability of their own, while they may soon be compelled to testify in the looming trial against Michael Corinthos. Diane Miller is already preparing a legal strategy to secure them immunity, shielding them from prosecution. With her long history of pulling Sunny Corinthos and Jason Morgan out of seemingly inescapable legal jeopardy, Diane may once again prove to be the unseen architect of justice, using her cunning not just to protect her clients, but to shape the outcome of the entire case. Trina and Kai's potential testimony could play a pivotal role in the prosecution's case, or in Michael's defense, depending on how events unfold. Although they've remained mostly in the shadows, their involvement in the events leading up to the shooting is more significant than they've let on. Diane, ever the legal tactician, understands the importance of leveraging their knowledge without sacrificing their freedom. By negotiating a preemptive immunity agreement, she can ensure that their testimony will be admissible and protected, all while keeping them from facing charges tied to their more secretive actions. One of the key advantages Diane holds in orchestrating this deal lies in the ambiguous nature of the evidence itself. Trina and Kai may have technically trespassed or tampered with material connected to Drew Kane's property, but their intent wasn't criminal, it was protective. Kai's role as Drew's assistant gave him legal access to the house, including a key, which muddies the legal waters surrounding their entry into the residence. The fact that they opened Drew's safe and destroyed incriminating evidence involving Portia Robinson is a more serious concern, but Diane will argue that it has no relevance to the current case, and thus should not be brought up. To mention it would open a can of legal worms and derail the primary focus, Michael's trial, and the circumstances surrounding the shooting. Diane is likely to frame Trina and Kai's actions as those of desperate but well-meaning young adults, trying to protect a loved one from being wrongly implicated. She will also emphasize that their cooperation now is essential for justice to be served. In legal terms, this is a classic justification for immunity, offering critical information in exchange for freedom from prosecution. If Justine Turner, the district attorney, truly wants a conviction or resolution, granting immunity to Trina and Kai might be her best path forward, even if she does so reluctantly. Meanwhile, Drew may be blindsided when he returns home to discover the intrusion into his personal space. Given his notoriously rigid sense of control and betrayal, Drew's initial reaction could be anger, particularly at Kai, someone he trusted professionally. But Kai, always perceptive, may have already rehearsed how to disarm that tension. He could plausibly present the entire situation as a surprise plan they were orchestrating, perhaps framing it as a misguided attempt to help clear Willow's name or shield Portia without causing Drew legal blowback. For a man like Drew, whose ego and desire for control run deep, the suggestion that this was all for his benefit and timed for dramatic effect may soften the blow. This surprise explanation, while thin, could be just persuasive enough if delivered with charm and emotional sincerity. After all, Drew is often sought to be seen as a protector and strategic leader. Framing the breach as a covert maneuver to serve his interests would appeal to his vanity, even if the facts suggest otherwise. More importantly, Kai and Trina will not admit to hearing the gunshots and fleeing the scene, a fact that Diane will instruct them to keep quiet. By distancing themselves from the immediate danger, they avoid drawing attention to any lingering suspicion that they were ever at risk or worse, involved in the shooting itself. While their actions may straddle the moral line, legally, they are more protected than they realize. With Diane in their corner, they benefit from a defense strategy built on precedent, emotional appeal, and clever framing. If the immunity deal is accepted, they will testify without fear of indictment. If it's rejected, Diane is still prepared to challenge the admissibility of any statements they make, arguing coercion or duress if needed. Either way, she is positioning them to walk away from this situation unscathed, at least in the eyes of the law. Behind the scenes, however, guilt may linger. Trina, whose moral compass is often set by her love of justice and loyalty to family, will continue to wrestle with whether destroying that evidence was the right thing to do. She may rationalize it as protecting her mother, Portia, but the decision has already set off a chain of consequences that could come back in unexpected ways. Kai, ever the pragmatist, may push her to let it go and focus on the future, especially if they're granted immunity. But unspoken tension between them could intensify, especially as their bond deepens under pressure. The courtroom is not the only battleground. Emotions are running high throughout Port Charles, and whispers about Kai and Trina's secretive actions may start circulating. If word leaks that they had access to Drew's safe or that something went missing from it, curiosity and suspicion will follow. The immunity deal may protect them from prison, but not from judgment or damaged reputations. Diane can keep them legally clean, but not morally unscathed. In the broader scheme, this legal twist could also have ripple effects across multiple storylines. If Drew senses that Portia was once again at the center of a cover-up, his alliance with her could fracture. If Sonny and Jason learn that Diane's priority briefly shifted to protecting to younger players in the game, trust could be tested. And if Willow discovers that Trina and Kai helped manipulate the narrative during her trial by hiding information, even unintentionally, the emotional consequences could be severe. Ultimately, Diane's maneuvering is a calculated risk. It's not just about protecting Trina and Kai. It's about maintaining a strategic advantage for Michael, preserving Portia's professional reputation, and ensuring that Drew doesn't implode upon his return. Every move is layered, every lie justified in the name of a greater good. But in a town like Port Charles, where secrets unravel faster than they can be buried, the immunity deal may be only a temporary shield against a much larger reckoning still to come. Although Willow Kane has been legally cleared of the charges against her and cannot be retried for the same crime under the protection of double jeopardy, her troubles may be far from over. The consequences she now faces aren't legal but deeply personal, emotional, and potentially devastating. With Trina and Kai's concealed evidence possibly coming to light, vindicating Michael Corinthos and exposing the truth behind the night of the shooting, the spotlight may shift back to Willow, not in a courtroom, but in the court of personal retribution, and no one may feel more betrayed than Drew Kane. Drew's temper and pride have long been defining traits, and if the ringtone recording presented by Trina and Kai ultimately supports Michael's innocence, then it also exposes the devastating truth that Willow allowed a false narrative to persist, a narrative that could have cost Michael his freedom. Even if her silence wasn't malicious, the consequences of her inaction ripple outward. For Drew, who has always fancied himself a man of moral clarity and justice, this revelation will cut deeply. He may not be able to prosecute Willow, but he can certainly hold her accountable in every other way that matters, unless he's naive enough to believe the evidence is fabricated, which is unlikely. Given the specifics, he will have to come to terms with the fact that someone he trusted intimately chose omission over truth. The ringtone in question, "Twinkle Twinkle Little Star," might seem innocuous, but in the context of this case, it's damning. Drew and his daughter, Scout Kane, both use that same ringtone. If Drew wasn't aware of the full picture or the timing of the call logs on Willow's phone, he might have assumed that the sound came from Scout's call while he was unconscious. That assumption could have sustained a lie, intentionally or not, one that allowed Willow to withhold vital evidence that could have freed Michael sooner. and potentially exonerated others, including Portia. What becomes increasingly apparent is that Trina and Kai's withheld proof, which they might have hoped would exonerate Willow, now seems more aligned with clearing Michael's name. That, in itself, is a strange twist of poetic justice. While they initially feared that introducing the evidence could backfire or complicate Willow's case, its most effective use may now lie in Michael's defense, and that is where Diane Miller's brilliance comes in. Diane may find a way to weaponize this audio clue in Michael's favor without implicating Trina and Kai or even Willow directly. But that doesn't mean Drew won't piece it all together. Drew, ever the man of structure and loyalty, may feel utterly betrayed not just by Willow, but by the entire situation. If he suspects that she heard that ringtone, realized it was his, and still said nothing, then he may interpret that silence as a personal betrayal, one that undermines everything they built. It also reveals a deeper fracture in their relationship. Willow's fear of exposing the truth may have been stronger than her loyalty to him. For a man like Drew, who has faced manipulation and control before, this may feel like history repeating itself. And in this case, it could cause a complete emotional unraveling. The emotional fallout doesn't end there. If Michael is cleared thanks to the evidence, it could embolden him to seek full custody or demand increased protections for his children, and for Scout Kane as well. If Michael begins to view Willow as a psychological danger, particularly if he believes she knowingly allowed false evidence to cloud the investigation, he may join forces with Drew to ensure she has limited or supervised access to the children. This sets up an intense family conflict that could easily escalate beyond custody battles into full-blown character assassination and legal restraining maneuvers. Ironically, Trina and Kai may find themselves trapped in a moral gray zone. While their evidence may ultimately save Michael, they may also be blamed for keeping it hidden during Willow's trial. Their decision to delay its disclosure could be interpreted as protecting Willow. But as the dominoes fall, that protection seems to have only complicated matters further. They might have tried to shield someone they thought was innocent, only to find that their hesitation caused a deeper rift within the Corinthos Kane family structure. And if Drew finds out they accessed his private property or tampered with the safe, any goodwill between them could evaporate instantly. Willow, too, is caught in a silent storm. Though free from legal punishment, she must now face the crushing consequences of lost trust. Her relationship with Drew may never recover. The quiet judgment from Michael, from Diane, from Trina and Kai, all of it may begin to erode the fragile sense of peace she felt after the verdict. And the irony may not be lost on her. The very silence she used to protect herself now speaks louder than any confession. In the broader scope of Port Charles, these developments will likely shake the foundations of multiple alliances. Diane may soon find herself at the center of a new legal crisis, tasked with defending Michael while managing fallout from her previous strategy. Alexis could be asked to explain her silence during Willow's trial, and may face professional scrutiny once more. Drew may channel his rage into decisive action, cutting ties, petitioning for custody, or turning his back on everyone involved. And Willow, who once stood as the fragile symbol of unjust accusation, may now become a symbol of selfish silence. Port Charles thrives on secrets, lies, and redemption arcs, but this time, the lines between hero and villain blur more than ever. Justice was served in the courtroom, but the emotional court is still very much in session. The children Wiley, Amelia, and Scout remain at the center of this war. Innocent casualties in a conflict driven by betrayal, hidden evidence, and shattered relationships. No one can undo what's already in motion. All anyone can do now is brace for the storm and hope the truth, wherever it leads, is enough to save what's left of the lives they've all worked so hard to protect.